this is TECsperts, where the East Carolinian and Tech TV come together to preview ECU athletics. Today, we're going to discuss ECU football going into Gainesville against the Gators. This is Adam Decker, the football beat writer for the East Carolinian. This is Jesse Deal, the football editor for the East Carolinian. This is Tyler Kellerbaugh, the other beat writer for the East Carolinian. And this is Brian Woodkovich, the sports editor for the East Carolinian. All right, so last week we had a great show talking about Towson. ECU came out with a W, and actually Brian is the man with bragging rights for this week as he picked the correct score. We're going to keep points of who gets the right impact player and who also gets the right score for the week. Brian got the closest with the score. Adam over here got the closest with the Chris Harrison prediction of impact player. So for this week, ECU was heading into Gainesville to play the Gators, where last year they came out just 8 points short. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about Towson and what we see going into this game this week. So just kick it off for us a little bit there with it, Tyler.
Yeah, ECU came in, they were 36-point favorites according to some odds makers, and they won the game 28-20. They ran a conservative offense, a lot of short passes, a lot of running. Chris Harrison ran for 4 touchdowns. He had a big game behind a good offensive line. But the Pirates defense gave up 416 yards, so that's not exactly inspiring going into a game against an SEC opponent.
I think the real problem with the ECU Towson game is that the Pirates really lacked a killer instinct in the game. It seemed like when they wanted to pull away in the third quarter and they wanted to get backup quarterback James Summers some action, they never really could, and the defense allowed Towson to go right down the field, and they made it an 8-point game. So if I'm ECU, I'm a little bit worried about the fact that I wasn't able to put a team away late in the game, and a team that was far inferior talent-wise, and that's concerning if you're a Pirate fan as well. The fact that this team can't pull away from a team like that doesn't tell you too much, because the American has really improved this year. There's a lot of good teams. So it's a tough schedule, and obviously they're non-conference. We know how tough that's going to be with Navy, Virginia Tech, Florida, BYU, all on the horizon. So it's going to be tough if you don't know how to put a team away. Especially
at home too, in front of a packed crowd. The crowd actually stayed through almost the entire game. You would have liked to see them really pull away in the third, but it just didn't happen.
And I feel like a lot of people were disappointed in the ECU offense. They were just throwing the screen passes, slam routes, nothing, didn't take any shots down the field. But I think the most eye-opening thing about the game was the ECU defense. Like you said, they let up over 400 yards to an FCS team. It just seemed like they were just getting, bullied in the trenches, everything. Darius Victor, just big run after big run after big run, and they just really couldn't stop Towson on third downs, and Towson had a very successful night.
In the past, ECU's rush defense has been pretty notable, and Darius Victor had consistent lanes the whole game. So it'll be interesting to see with Florida, a team who had 9 rushers against New Mexico State, to see what they do with that.
All right, so Harrison, he ended up having a big game, Adam. What are some of the things that you're looking for Harrison and in the running offense this week against Florida?
Well, they said before the game with the whole offense in general that there was going to be more of a rushing type offense than we've had previously. So I think everybody was kind of expecting for Harrison to get a couple more touches than first expected. But the offensive line, it's their second year returning. They did lose Dante Livingston last week to an injury. But the offensive line, I think, is just a key point. They're very experienced. The offensive line, was constantly making holes for him. And Harrison, let's not forget, he's a very talented runner. He's got some speed. He's got some power. He's more of a balanced back. So I feel like, Florida's obviously going to be more talented, a little more quick. But Harrison, I expect to have, some success. Maybe not 4 touchdowns and 150-some yards, but I'm expecting him to have another big game.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing that, though, because what made Harrison so good in the last game was the fact that he was able to get to the second level. And when he got to the second level, he had the speed to beat the Towson defenders. Well, now he's going up against an SEC front 7, a team that runs a 4-2-5 as well. So 4 down linemen, that's clogging up a lot of the lanes on the inside. Then you got 2 linebackers and then 5 secondary players. Well, Chris Harrison, when he gets to that second level, there's going to be a lot more players there ready for him. They're going to be a lot faster, a lot more talented. So I have a hard time seeing him be able to pull off the big yards, the long runs like he was able to do against Towson. I just don't see it happening against Florida.
I agree with that with the big runs, but I think he'll consistently be at least giving Blake Kemp some time, with play action and things like that. I'm not saying I think he's going to bust out another 45-yard touchdown run or something like that, but I definitely expect him, to pick up, probably gain around 4 to 5 yards a carry, which, it's solid. It's okay.
He's going to need to do that if they're going to have a chance. They're going to have to open up the passing offense by establishing the run. That's actually kind of what Towson did to them last week. If they can't establish the run, the talented corners of Florida are just going to be probably too much.
And you mentioned the talented corners that Florida has. So what can we look for from Blake Kemp this week? As last week he was solid. He wasn't really special, but he did what he needed to do to win the game.
I guess a lot of playing to his strengths, probably a lot of what you saw against Towson, but I think Dave Nichols is going to have to open it up at some point, if not only to keep the Florida defense honest, because the fact that you could get away with those screens, those slants, those timing routes against Towson doesn't mean you can do that against everybody, and I don't think they can do that up against anybody else on this schedule. So I think if you're Dave Nichols, you're going to have to kind of get a little more vertical passing just to keep the defense honest, and we'll see. I mean, I know for a fact that they want to get James Summers in there. I know that they want to get him in there badly, and with Cody Keith now leaving the team, James Summers is the guy, the number 2 quarterback. So they want to get him in there. They want to see what he can do, and from all accounts that I've heard, I mean, he's the best pure passer on the team, and he's a dual threat guy too, so he's got the best arm. He just isn't as acclimated with the offense yet, so I think that they're going to test Blake Kemp out, and it could be a make or break week for him.
Isaiah Jones served as a really good safety net against Towson for Blake Kemp. He's going to be going up against Vernon Hargreaves III. He's an all-SEC cornerback. That's going to be a matchup to watch.
Hargreaves also very highly touted. Ruffin McNeil done nothing but rant and rave about him. Calls him a potential first-round draft pick. Has a lot of potential. He's coincidentally the one who picked off Shane Carden in the Birmingham Bowl last year. So that's definitely a big matchup to watch. But Dave Nichols has been quoted as saying that they're not going to throw to that entire side of the field. If anybody's open and Hargreaves is covering them, they're gonna test it. So, but also look for Blake Kemp. Both Kemp and Nickel were both quoted as saying that the reason they threw so many short screens, things like that, is because the Towson cornerbacks were playing 10 yards off. They didn't want to get beat off the line by the ECU receivers, so it was kind of giving them that. So if the Florida defenders are pressing, maybe we see more spread out offense, but we'll just have to look and see.
Building off what Brian said, I think this is really going to be Kemp's test. If last week's game was easing him into the offense, this is his chance to really show what he has as a quarterback. And if he fails the test, Summers is waiting.
Let's put this all also in perspective too, that the defense did not perform well last week as well. So what can we expect from this defense going into an SEC opponent?
They got Treon Harris and Will Greer. Both are actually dual threat quarterbacks. Will Greer is actually going to get the start. Last week against New Mexico State, Treon Harris started. Will Greer is a great athlete. He was expected to come. Ruffin McNeil tried to get him to actually come to ECU. His dad was a Pirate, and McNeil thought the Pirates would have a chance at actually getting him. Unfortunately, he's now on the other side of the field.
I think the ECU defense is going to be in a lot of trouble if they play like they did against Towson. Like he just said, the 2 quarterback threat, Treon Harris and Will Greer, they combined for 384 passing yards and 5 touchdowns last week against New Mexico State. Will Greer in high school set a national record with 837 yards and 10 touchdown passes in one game. So it definitely looks to be an explosive offense. The running backs and the wide receivers, it's more of a spread out tandem. There were 5 different rushers last week that had more than 20 yards, with the leading rusher only having 50 yards rushing, but they made up for 222 rushing yards. So it definitely seems like this offense is extremely deep, and they have multiple threats. So look for ECU defense to have to step up.
And listen, this Florida team, it's different from the one we saw last year. It's not as conservative as it was under Will Muschamp. Jim McElwain, the new head coach, he has a new offensive coordinator, Doug Nussmeier, is coming in. Both of those guys have Alabama ties, but they bring this kind of spread offense look to Florida now, to Gainesville. And the Gators, they're more up-tempo. They want to get the ball going. They want to start moving quickly, get the no-huddle, establish that tempo, and get the ball to receivers in open space with short passes and let them, their athletes beat you one-on-one. So that's what Florida does now. So don't expect to see the same conservative Florida team that we've seen the past 4 or 5 years, because it's new now. I mean, they want to get it going. They want to be fast. They want to be athletic. They want to really utilize speed. It's not about bullying the team in front of them and beating guys 11 on 11. No, it's about getting guys in space and letting their superior athletes be able to break away and gain large chunks of yardage.
All right, so now we talked a little bit about Florida. We're going to go into some impact players for this week. So, Adam, who do you think is going to be key for ECU or for the game in general?
I think tight end Bryce Williams for the Pirates, 6'6", big athletic frame, tall guy, somebody that McElwain is highly praised. He's talked about him multiple times this week. He's very athletic. I feel like he's going to be a safety blanket for Blake Kemp over the middle. I look for him, he's a bit 6'6", going to have slower linebackers on him or smaller corners on him. So I'm expecting a big game from him.
Jesse, who's your impact player going into this week?
I'm going with Blake Kemp. He was 29 for 37 last week, 235 yards, but most of it was just bubble passes, screen passes. So we really didn't get to see, his strengths as a quarterback. So I think this is really his test, and who knows, he could unleash the passing attack that we've seen from ECU in the past.
Very possible. So Tyler, who was your impact player going into this week?
Well, I'd like to go with the offensive line, but if I got to pick one guy, I'll take Isaiah Jones. If ECU is going to play Florida close, Isaiah Jones is going to have to make a few plays down the field. He's a talented guy. He was good for the Pirates last year. I think he had 6 catches against Towson. He's going to have about, I'd say, 80 yards, 100 yards to really push the Florida defense.
I'm going to surprise you guys a little bit. I'm going to go with Worth Gregory. I think that he's going to have to be good because he's going to have to be able to flip the field because ECU's offense isn't going to be able to move the ball at will. If ECU's going to win this game, it's not going to be because they're putting up a lot higher points than Florida. It's going to be because the defense played well, made stops, and the offense was able to capitalize on turnovers. So I think Worth Gregory is going to be really important. Flipping the field, not putting Florida in a good position to start the ball off, with good field position. So I think that Worth Gregory on his leg, we know he's a great punter, so he's going to have a big game if ECU wants any chance to win this.
I like that pick.
Former SEC punter, is going to be going right back into Gainesville to play.
Yeah, a lot of Alabama ties, huh? Doug Nussmeier, Jim McElwain, Worth Gregory.
Yeah, a lot of Alabama this game. It's always roll tide whenever we're talking college football. All right, so now we're going to get into the nitty gritty that we call predictions. We're going to start off with Brian going in.
I'm going to go Florida 41-10. Seems a little harsh, but it's not a great matchup for ECU on either side of the ball. You don't know what you have offensively. A lack of offense really is kind of a poor defense in a way. So I just have a hard time seeing ECU be able to muster much offensively, and I think that Florida, I don't think they're going to jump on them quickly, but I think Florida's going to pull away at the end. I think we're going to see maybe a little bit of a demoralized ECU squad, so 41-10 Florida.
Tyler?
I'm going to go 44-13 Florida. Similar reasons for Brian. I just think that they're too talented. They're too good athletes. ECU didn't really blow me away against Towson. I just don't want to imagine what an SEC team is going to do to that defense.
Jesse, what are you expecting for this week?
I'm taking the Gators 38-17. Before last week, I thought the Pirates had a chance in this game, but the way they played against Towson, allowing a Division II team to be competitive. Florida put over 600 yards on New Mexico State. This is going to be tough.
All right, now finally Adam.
I'm going to go with the closest guess, 31-13, Florida winning. One thing we haven't mentioned is that last week against New Mexico State, Florida played in front of a sold-out crowd, over 90,000 fans. It's going to be more than double what ECU had last week. And in this being Blake Kemp's second career start, maybe if they had Kurt Bankert, they would have, maybe they could pull it out, but I just don't have the confidence.
Wow. Once again, we have everybody going consistent, so I'm going to go against the grain once again. I'm going 28-24 ECU. James Summers gets in the game, and he destroys the Florida defense with his running. 4.2 speed. He's going to get him. All right, and that's TECsperts for this week, and we appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Watch us next week.